Before we begin, a quick note for all of you listeners. The holiday season and the start of a new year, it often comes with mixed emotions: rest, reflection, pressure, hope, and sometimes quite anxiety about what is coming next. Today's conversation is not about pretending that everything is feeling good. It's about learning how to stay present, grounded, and mentally prepared when life feels uncertain. Welcome back, listeners, to the Mindful Living podcast. I'm your host, Sana, and this time of year, it often pushes us into two extremes. Either we reflect deeply or we rush straight into planning the next chapter of our lives. Some of us feel calm, but then some of us, we have this feeling like we're left behind, and it's a really bad feeling. Some of us feel like we're ready for change, but then others feel exhausted by the idea of another reset. And today's guest brings a rare combination of disciplines that speak directly to this moment. Alexandra is a master of astrology, martial arts, hermetic philosophy. She has spent over 15 years teaching astrology and tarot internationally and over 20 years teaching martial arts as a sensei in Boxe. Oh my goodness. Okay, I have to work on this pronunciation. But then, listeners, her work focuses on helping entrepreneurs and executives foresee and prepare for imminent events, not just spiritually, but strategically. And listeners, let me tell you that this conversation is not about blind belief or positivity. It is about awareness, preparedness, and personal responsibilities. Alexandra, welcome to the Mindful Living. And as always, it's a joy to have you here with us.
Oh, thank you so much, Sana. Thank you for having me today. It's wonderful to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm really sorry, Alexandra. I kind of couldn't pronounce or mispronounce actually. I don't know. I think it's a French pronunciation. Not
Oh,
sure.
yes. So
When,
I
when
I've so I have an instructorship in Boxe Française Savate, which is a French form of kickboxing.
Oh, I didn't know that. I never knew that. Never knew that. This is very very exciting. I hope our listeners are also very very excited, because mindfulness. When we keep it martial arts or kickboxing, all these things. When we see through mindfulness, it kind of becomes like counterintuitive, because mindfulness is described as slowing down, being present, observing thoughts. But then martial arts, especially at higher levels, it you know demands speed, decisiveness, and sometimes aggression. How do you personally reconcile mindfulness with the intensity required in martial arts?
Oh my gosh. Well, Sana, I'm going to tell you a little secret.
A quick pause for you listening listeners. If this conversation is already giving you language for what you feel inside, or if you feel it's helping you see your patterns with a little less shame, hit follow. All right, back to it.
The best martial
Uh-huh.
artists all have a strong presence of mind. And I want to kind of paraphrase actually one of my own teachers. His name is Sovereign
Mm,
Hidero, and he talks about this concept of your inner universe. And
mhm,
we could really think of mindfulness as your inner universe. And if you're not in control of your inner universe, you
mhm,
can't expect to be effective in the outside world.
mm,
So the best martial artists really work on mindfulness because, you mention aggression and speed and decisiveness. And these are all things that actually come from mindfulness practices. So that is the gift that you get on the other side of them, actually. And
mm,
and so for people who don't have that inner awareness and who really don't have that emotional and mental mastery, right? Controlling their inner universe, um, they actually don't do well in the higher levels of martial arts because your mind and your emotions can actually stand in the way of performance. And so it seems kind of counterintuitive because most people think that, um, these martial artists are acting, only out of instinct, and
Mm.
and instinct is part of it, um, but in order to come to that place where, uh, the emotions of dealing with aggression don't become a hindrance, you really have to have a strong, background in mindfulness so that you can be the observer.
That is so interesting. That is so interesting. And do you believe that mindfulness makes people calmer, or does it actually make them more decisive when, pressure hits?
Well, I think that it does both because in order to be more decisive when things go awry, when things go crazy, you have to be calm. And so that decisiveness is based on being fully present in the moment and by not becoming ungrounded by the thoughts and emotions that are generated during difficulty.
Hmm. I really love that response. And this I think this definitely means that mindfulness, it is not passive. It is also not about hesitation, but it's about clarity in motion. And that challenges the common idea that being mindful means being soft or slow.
Absolutely. Like,
Mm.
Sana, one of the greatest gifts of mindfulness and of developing your own universe, mastery over your mind and emotions, is that it gives you the ability to deal with, oh, what's the word that I'm looking for here? Um, Anticipation. So anticipation is when you start making presumptions about whatever is coming, right? And so for some people, maybe their boss says to you, "Hey, can I talk to you in an hour?" And so their mind starts anticipating all the 50 different things that their boss is trying to talk to them about. And it's like, "Oh no, am I in trouble for this? Am I in trouble for that? What's going on? Am I getting fired?" And so their mind is anticipating so many different outcomes. And as a martial artist, anticipation, which really is one of the, I guess you could say, enemies of mindfulness, and why we become mindful. Anticipation is what gets you in trouble in martial arts. So I often like to give this example, Sana. So I've been a boxer for many years, and one of the things that you can't do is you can't presume or anticipate a hit. So, I've seen this time and again where someone sees the punch coming and their mind tells them how much that punch is going to hurt.
Mm.
And of course, their immediate reaction is that they turn their face away in anticipation of pain, right? But when you do that, you actually get hit worse. If you actually look at the punch, your hands can do something about it, right? So if you maintain that calmness of presence, you can be decisive and you can actually block it or move your head or, something else, right? But if you just turn your head away, all you're doing is you're letting your own emotions about the thought of being punched get to you, and it actually ends up hurting you worse than if you had been calm and done something about it.
Wow. I think this really kind of, um, helps in visualizing it, because um, I think defense is also a huge strategy here, whether it's, we talk about in physical or mental or emotional aspects. And uh, let's take martial arts, as a mental training here, like, because many people think that, it's about physical. We often picturize only the physical strength, that how martial arts tests physical strength. But then from your experience, Alexandra, what mental habits does martial arts training build that most mindfulness practices do not address directly? It's an interesting
How to
question.
deal with hardship.
Oh, okay.
So, this is actually a really interesting question because most mindfulness practices happen outside of action
Mm.
and outside of the hardship. And so you kind of train yourself to undergo a certain mental programming, and then you take that programming, and then when you're in a time of mental stress, for example, you try and apply this programming or this exercise or that kind of thing. Now, what I love about martial arts is that you are in the difficulty. So so for example, you've been punching the bag for an hour and you're doing push-ups and then you're punching the bag some more, and how your body and your mind scream at you. Actually, I'm not even gonna say your body. Often it's your mind. What I love about martial arts and I mean, physical activity in general is great for this. But what it does is it gives you an opportunity to see just how much your mind victimizes you to whatever you are experiencing. So, Sana, I can't tell you how many times I have been working out or, hitting the bag or whatever it is I'm doing. And my mind is screaming, "What are you doing? This sucks. This is awful, blah, blah, blah." But then I actually check in with my body and it's like, no, I'm fine. I can keep going. And so martial arts really gives you an incredible insight into just how much your mind can make or break you in a situation. And on top of it, undergoing direct difficulty, like controlled direct difficulty through martial arts or physical activity in general, it gives you the ability to withstand difficulty in other areas of your life. So this is where I don't see other mindfulness training going because you don't get that stress inoculation. So we take booster shots and we receive injections to inoculate ourselves against diseases, but we can also inoculate our minds against difficulty. And putting ourselves through martial arts and physical training is one of the best ways to do that.
Mm. Wow, it really got me excited, into exploring more about this because, I mean, um, this is really, I think it really, if I put it into the like technical terms or maybe what we kind of study or see, it like, it helps you exploring your tenacity or your tensile strength, like how long it can be stretched. I mean, you know, we may think that, sometimes that we are completely broken or we are unbreakable. But then I think martial arts is such an effective way of exploring that, how much more I can kind of take in, kind of, getting that into a balanced mode. Like, I would love to know, like, what do you think about it? Like, does it help us in getting that balance, or it just helps us in knowing the extreme of us?
Well, I love this point that you're making here, Sana, because part of the reason many people are stressed is because they actually don't know what they're capable of. So they're what
Mhm.
they perceive to be their threshold is actually a threshold that is imposed by their mind and not by their actual capability. So, what if you were only operating at 30 or 40% of what you could do? And what if that was just a self-imposed limitation that comes from the mind?
Exactly. Yeah.
So, so when someone asks more of you than this mental imposition, of course that's highly stressful, and you freak out and you fret and your mind goes crazy, and then you do it. And you realize, well, maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe I am capable of more. And part of that, knowing our capability, is also a part of mindfulness. And if you don't know what you can do, if you don't know who you are, then everything is going to stress you.
True. Absolutely. And I can vouch for it from my own experiences. We often talk about, um, you know, just normal everyday mothers becoming super moms, like doing everything together, but still, kind of figuring out. Sometimes, we don't even know what exactly is our capacity or what are our strengths. And I think it really helps us. Martial arts really helps us in kind of concentrating or focusing in there.
Absolutely. And I think that knowing yourself really is one of the central concepts to mindfulness. That is important. Mindfulness is simply awareness. And in awareness, there is always the option to create change. So you have to be aware of yourself. And then you also have to be perceptive or open to what is happening around you. And
Mm.
martial arts absolutely trains this. Of course, you might get to know yourself through the lens of, what are my physical talents or physical capacities. But martial arts is also revelatory about your own mental and emotional nature as well. You really get to know yourself as a person because martial arts isn't always about aggression. Um, and not every martial artist is aggressive either. And that's why there are many different martial arts styles and, various ways of participation. Because some people, yes, they're looking to get into the ring and maybe knock out Jake Paul, make a couple $1 million, and that's wonderful. But then there are people who do it for themselves because it is a way of really engaging in their own fiery energy and also de-stressing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Such a great point that you made, Alessandra. Such a great point. And I think the next question is also very, very, it's one of my favorite because I think as a person, as a human, I'm still learning this, and it's a lifelong kind of a course for me, like preparing for the unknown, especially entrepreneurs, executives, but overall as a human, because you work specifically with them, entrepreneurs and executives who need to anticipate change. And I think this is becoming more and more relevant in today's day and age. And then mindfulness, it teaches the acceptance of uncertainty. Why business often demands control and prediction. So, how do you help people balance acceptance with strategic preparation?
There's hardly anything that can't be turned to advantage if you remain calm and if you know your gifts, talents, abilities, and resources that you have at hand.
Mm.
So, hermetically, whatever is handed to you is also, I guess we could call it a weapon that you can use to advocate for yourself or fight for yourself. And so I always look at this from the perspective of martial arts. If somebody is punching me, right? And so we equate that to say, a difficult business situation. Well, I can let that punch hit me because I can say they shouldn't be hitting me, right? Denying reality. Or I can say, this is coming. So what am I going to do about it? Right? So I might slip that punch and throw one of my own. I might block it in another way. I might evade and set up my own game, right?
Yep.
So when you begin to look at the things that are coming to you as opportunities, that everything that faces you is an opportunity. Yes, some of those opportunities they're going to strike. They're going to hit. They may not be pleasant. But if I don't turn my head away, i.e. make myself blind to what's happening, there's always something I can do about it. And Sana, you would be surprised how often that by staring down what you perceive to be challenges, you actually open huge gateways to good fortune.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's amazing. That's amazing. And I want to bring in an astrology versus personal responsibility. Um, because your background. I mean, it's such a diverse background, and astrology it often gets criticized for encouraging people to outsource responsibility. People say things like, "This is happening because of my chart," or in India as well, we kind of say about like Mercury in retrograde and all that stuff. Um,
Oh, not just in India.
like this dosh and that dosh, this planet is in this year. Oh my goodness! And then all those stones and rings. One of my friend, he's so my one of my friends, his mom, she is a very staunch like believer of wearing rings and then all sorts of thing, for like channeling down or reducing down your negative energy or something like that. Yeah, but his colleague had told that these things do not matter. Your actions decide your course of your life. So this is all BS. So as someone, because you work with executives, entrepreneurs, how do you prevent astrology from becoming an excuse rather than a tool?
Oh, I love this question. So, astrology does not take away free will. Thank goodness for that. So, the underlying philosophy, I guess I could say, with how I work with astrology is well, let's go back to the boxing ring. So, astrology is the punches that are coming your way. And like I said, or actually the example you gave where people say, oh, well, Mercury's in retrograde and that kind of thing, that's the equivalent of looking away and getting hit harder.
Yeah.
So astrology doesn't make us do anything. It doesn't make us behave in certain ways. It it is energy or forces that we are receptive to, but we still have our own agency. So when these forces or, going back into the ring, punches are coming my way,
Mhm.
I have a chance to do something about them. So where I have personally not healed, yes, those are punches that are going to land and they may not be pleasant, but that's okay. Um, I still have the opportunity to do something about it. And in fact, the fact that the punch landed actually is a reminder for me to get better, right? Like keep my hands up or improve my defense game or whatever it is. So astrology does not dictate, it does not control. These are forces that I can work with actively.
Mm.
And when I actively work with them, similar to a magician, basically,
Mhm.
then I can be more effective in what I do because they are constant stimulations, some of them supportive,
Mhm.
others reminders that I have things I need to clear, that there's areas of mastery that I haven't owned yet. And so when I work with these forces, I
Mhm.
become better, stronger, calmer, more present. Astrology was always the pathway back to God. And
Yeah.
so all of these forces, that is where they are trying to carry me to. They are trying to carry me to the summit of my being and the grandest totality of who I am.
Wow. Grandest totality of who I am. And I love that phrase. Love that phrase. And I believe this distinction matters, especially for leaders. Like if insight does not lead to action, it just becomes an intellectual comfort, not transformation.
Absolutely, Sana. Sometimes I have people who sit down with me and we create that action plan. I tell them about the aspects they have working in their way or working for them that are supportive. And so when I sit down with them again, I say, okay, so how did it go? Oh, well, I didn't act on it.
Yeah.
And and it's like, well, you just missed out on a supportive window of opportunity. Why didn't you act on it? This is a time you really could have made some great progress.
Yep.
Well, I didn't feel like it. So in effect, they allowed their own emotional state to get in the way of something bigger and greater for themselves that would just completely blow their emotional state out of the water if they had just done it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think I've really observed, not just in business or professional world, but in personal lives as well. Sometimes most of our decisions or those like we assume the output in advance, and we are driven by fear or obligation or shame or guilt, and after some time, we again might get into that circle of judgment, that why didn't I take that decision, why didn't I go with that, maybe something is wrong with me.
Yeah, well, there's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is the thing that shame is, it's such a pervasive thing. And shame is one of the greatest underminers to the human spirit that exists. And
Mm.
and if you can conquer shame, um, that honestly would be the equivalent of, for the most part, conquering negativity in your life.
Exactly.
That's how pervasive it is.
No doubt. No doubt. um Alexandra, as always, such personally a learning um conversation, reflection for me as well, and I'm very sure for our listeners as well, because we just kind of lived, witnessed, heard. We have begun on this journey to understand this beautiful confluence of mindfulness, martial arts, mental strength, astrology. Thank you so much once again. And of course, if listeners they would like to connect with you after this conversation, what would be the easiest way?
The easiest way would be to actually go to my website, astrologerroyale.com. And I would love to connect with anyone who is interested in Hermetic philosophy, martial arts, and astrology as well.
Amazing, amazing. Listeners, as I always do, and I'll have all the links in the show notes, so just refer to them. And before we close this conversation, um, I think this conversation, listeners, remind us that mindfulness is not escape, martial arts is not violence, astrology is not fate. Each is a tool, and tools require responsibility, discipline, and honest self reflection. So, Alexander, once again, thank you so much for bringing such clarity and grounded insight. Thank you.
Oh, that was my pleasure. Thank you so much, Insana. That was so beautiful what you just said.
Thank you. Thank you. And to all of our listeners, you do not need to have everything figured out. You do need to stay present, prepared, and willing to engage with reality as it is. And if this episode resonated with you, take a moment to reflect. Not on what you want the new year to give you, but on what kind of awareness and strength you are willing to bring into it. Until next time, this is the Mindful Living. Stay grounded, stay curious, and take care. Thank you.